It was a regular Thursday evening at our home, located just on the fringes of a bustling city. John and I were sinking into our usual evening rituals, he with a beer in hand, relaxing on the sofa after a demanding day at his auto repair shop, and I, Virginia, absorbed in my laptop, keenly observing the latest trends in stocks and cryptocurrencies. Our quaint, two-story house, once chosen for its potential to nurture a future family, now seemed like a battlefield marking our diverging paths. "So, how is the market today?" John inquired, his voice casual but tinged with an undertone of tension that had become all too familiar. "Usual fluctuations, but cryptocurrencies seem promising," I responded, trying to maintain harmony. John let out a dismissive chuckle and set his beer down a bit forcefully. "Crypto again? You know, not everything that shines is gold, Virginia." I sighed and closed my laptop, bracing myself for the same old debate. "And not every car that rolls into your shop is worth fixing, yet you fix them because you see their value. Why can't you see the value in what I'm doing?" "Because cars are tangible, Virginia. You can touch them, fix them, sell them. What you're doing, throwing our money into the wind, hoping it flies back with more, it's just reckless." Frustration bubbled up within me, the repetitive argument wearing thin. "It's not reckless, John. It's calculated. There's a big difference between gambling and investing. I wish you'd try to understand that." John stood and began pacing. "Calculated? You call putting our hard-earned money into something as unstable as cryptocurrency calculated?" "Yes, I do, because I don't jump in blindly. I research, I study trends, and I make informed decisions. It's no different from what you do with your shop." "My shop is a sure thing, Virginia. People always need car repairs. But this? It's just a phase. What happens when it crashes? What then? We could lose everything. John, we could lose money in any investment. The shop could falter too. Nothing's guaranteed. But haven't we seen good returns on my investments? Isn't that worth something?" He stopped pacing and ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "It's not just about the money, Virginia. It's about security, about not risking everything on a gamble. Why can't we invest more in the shop and expand it? That's a tangible way to grow our money. And put all our eggs in one basket? What if something happens to the shop, John? Diversification is key. That's investing 202. He shook his head, the distance between our views as wide as ever. "Diversification, sure, but into something stable. This digital fairy dust." Standing now, driven by a need to defend my choices and independence, I retorted, "You know, for someone who runs his own business, you're surprisingly closed-minded. And you're surprisingly stubborn," he countered. "All I'm saying is we could be using that money to build something lasting, something we can actually see and touch." As usual, our conversation was going in circles. "Let's just agree to disagree, okay? I won't comment on how you run your shop and you don't critique my investments," I suggested, hoping to find some middle ground. John exhaled deeply, the fight leaving him. "Fine, but just remember, Virginia, if all this blows up, don't say I didn't warn you." The tension between John and me wasn't the only strain in our lives. His family dynamics added another layer of complexity. Living close to his parents and sister meant frequent interactions, each a reminder of our different views on family and responsibility. It was on a Sunday afternoon when John suggested we visit his parents. Just the thought made my stomach turn. It wasn't his parents I was wary of, it was Carol, John's sister, whose lifestyle baffled me. "Come on, Virginia, it's been ages since we last saw them. Mom's been asking about you, and you know Dad is dealing with cancer," John pressed, noting my hesitation. "Yeah, I bet Carol's missed me too," I muttered, my sarcasm clear. "Look, I know you two don't see eye to eye, but can't you just try?" "For me," he pleaded. Sighing, I agreed. "Fine, but I'm not staying if she starts bragging about shopping sprees." When we arrived, Carol was already there, flaunting her latest designer bag, her air of superiority as pungent as perfume. "Look at this, just got it yesterday. Isn't it fabulous?" she gushed, barely acknowledging us. "It's something," I managed to say, biting my tongue. John's mother, oblivious to the tension, ushered us in. "Virginia, Dear, so glad you could make it. You two should visit more often. The afternoon dragged on with Carol dominating the conversation with tales of her latest vacations and shopping exploits. I maintained a neutral expression, engaging minimally, but my patience thinned. So, Virginia, still playing with your stocks and bits? Carol sneered, her tone dripping with disdain. It's called investing, Carol. Maybe you should try it sometime instead of wasting money on things you don't need. I snapped back, my annoyance breaking through. John gave me a warning look, but it was too late. Carol scoffed. Investing? Please, like gambling on the internet is something to brag about. At least when I spend my money, I have something to show for it. Something to show until it goes out of fashion next season, I retorted, unable to hold back. That's enough, both of you, John's father interjected sternly. We're here to enjoy each other's company, not to argue about whatever this is. The rest of the visit passed in uncomfortable silence. As we left, John couldn't hide his frustration. Virginia, why do you have to provoke her? Can't you just let it go for one afternoon? I provoke her? She started it with her snide remarks. I'm just not going to sit there and take it, John. Sometimes, I wish you'd try a little harder for peace. Try harder, John? I'm not the one splurging on luxuries, I countered, feeling both defiant and drained from the day's events. The tension in the room was palpable as Carol continued to flaunt her latest extravagances, seemingly oblivious to how it affected everyone around her. It baffled me why no one confronted her about her overindulgent behavior. John noticed my frustration and offered an explanation. She's family, Virginia. We support each other, even if we don't always approve of their choices. I countered, feeling the need to highlight the distinction. Supporting someone and enabling their poor choices are two different things, John. Someone needs to set boundaries for her. He sighed deeply, the weight of the situation visible in his expression. I get it, but changing her isn't in our hands. She's set in her ways, and Mom and Dad aren't about to start challenging her now. But what about us, John? How are we expected to build our future with your family's constant financial demands? I questioned, worried about our stability. We'll manage, Virginia. We always find a way, he reassured me, though his voice lacked conviction. The somber news of Mr. Nathan's passing came as a shock. The whole family was thrown from planning treatment options to mourning his loss. During our grief, Carol took the reins on the funeral arrangements and soon after, dropped a bombshell about the cost. John looked troubled as he broke the news in our living room. Virginia, Carol's planned a funeral that costs $90,000. She expects us to cover half. I was stunned. $90,000? John, that's excessive. Are we funding a funeral or staging a spectacle? He frowned, his tone serious. This isn't the time to argue about money, Virginia. It's about honoring my father in the way he deserves. But surely there must be a mistake with that amount. It's just too much, I persisted, struggling to understand the exorbitant figure. John's frustration boiled over. My father has just passed away, and you're here bickering about the expense? That's insensitive, Virginia. I'm not bickering, I'm genuinely shocked. We've never considered spending that much even on major personal expenses, I explained, hoping he would see my point. John abruptly stood, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I don't need this right now. I don't need you questioning the cost of my father's funeral. If you can't see beyond the numbers for once, perhaps you shouldn't be involved. I bit back my initial retort, recognizing his pain. I'm sorry, John. I'll make sure the $45,000 is sent to Carol. I just need a moment to process all of this, I said softly, conceding to keep the peace. John paced agitatedly, his usual calm demeanor unraveled by grief. It's not just about the money, Virginia. It's about doing the right thing for him. And if that means paying whatever it takes, then we will. His words echoed in the tense air, a reminder of the complex interplay of family loyalty and financial responsibility. When I informed John about sending the funds to Carol, he barely responded, absorbed in his deep sorrow and frustration. The space between us in our living room felt more like miles than mere feet. Stepping into the funeral home, the enormity of recent events weighed heavily on me. The last several days had been a chaotic blend of sadness and confusion, Yet nothing had prepared me for the revelation that awaited me there. Upon reaching the reception desk, I steadied my voice and said, "I'm here for Mr. Nathan's funeral." The woman behind the counter looked up, her face filled with regret. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you're too late. Mr. Nathan was cremated yesterday." My heart sank. "Excuse me? I was told the funeral was today." Her expression softened as she replied, "The family decided to reschedule." "I'm deeply sorry for the mix-up and your loss." Rooted to the spot, bewildered and upset, I wondered how John could have failed to inform me. Outraged, I quickly called him, my fingers shaking with disbelief and anger. "John, why didn't you tell me the funeral date was changed?" "I just showed up like a fool, only to discover I missed it all," I exclaimed. John's voice was cold and distant. "I didn't think you'd care, Virginia. You've only been fussing over the expenses and questioning every decision. I didn't see why you'd want to attend. Because he was my father-in-law, because I am your wife. How could you just cut me out?" I responded, my voice cracking under the strain of hurt and anger. "Perhaps not for much longer," he retorted, his voice filled with acrimony. "What are you implying?" I demanded, my heart plummeting. "I'm done, Virginia. I can't continue this way. You seem more concerned with your investments than our family. The divorce papers are ready." His words struck me sharply, as if I had been slapped. "Divorce?" Surely, he wasn't serious. "This can't be happening, John. Over this? We can discuss it. We can resolve things," I pleaded. "No, Virginia, it's too late. I'm putting the house on the market. We'll split everything and part ways," he declared. I was left speechless, barely comprehending as I stumbled back to the parking lot, where I saw Carol pulling up in a shiny new luxury car. My anger surged anew. "Nice car, Carol. How did you afford this?" "Inheritance," she responded nonchalantly, her smile not quite reaching her eyes as she casually tossed her hair. "Yes, Dad left me a little something." Her flippant reference to her father, the shopping bags in her hands, and her apparent lack of grief infuriated me. "A little something, huh? Seems mourning has its perks." Carol's smile turned to a smirk. "Everyone grieves differently, Virginia. Some of us invest in stocks, others in cars." I clenched my fists, feeling the injustice burn within me. As my relationship with John crumbled, here was Carol, apparently thriving amidst the upheaval. "Enjoy your car, Carol. It must have cost a pretty penny, or should I say a pretty dollar?" Her laugh rang hollow, reverberating in the empty parking lot as she walked away. The man I loved was distancing himself from me, and the family I had tried to embrace was showing their true colors. In the days that followed, each moment was shrouded in a fog of disbelief and betrayal. The weight of the divorce papers in my purse felt like a constant, heavy reminder of my marriage falling apart. Seeing Carol's brand new luxury car sparked a suspicion that I couldn't dismiss. Compelled to uncover the truth, I decided to visit the funeral home where Mr. Nathan's services were arranged. With a mix of determination and suspicion fueling me, I entered the funeral home. The place had an eerie quietness, fitting its somber purpose. At the reception desk, I was surprised to see Michelle, a high school classmate who seemed like the last person to end up working at a funeral home. "Michelle," I called out, louder than intended for such a solemn place. "I had no idea you worked here." Her head snapped up, and after a brief moment of surprise, recognition dawned on her face. "Virginia? Wow, it's been ages. What brings you here? Anything I can help with?" Taking a deep breath, I braced myself for the conversation ahead. "Actually, yes. It's about my father-in-law's funeral. I heard it was arranged here." Michelle's demeanor shifted to professional, yet her eyes betrayed a flicker of curiosity. "Sure, let me pull up the details." As she typed, I fidgeted, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on me. When Michelle located the record, her eyebrows knit together in concern. "Okay, here it is." The service was straightforward, just a cremation kept simple. The total came to $9,000. My heart dropped. $9,000? But we were told it cost $90,000. We believed that was the price. Michelle paused, her expression turning serious. "That's a huge difference. It was Carol who handled the arrangements, right? Everything here was billed at $9,000, nothing more. The pieces were starting to come together, forming a picture I was reluctant to see. Can you print me a copy of that bill? I need proof. Sure thing, Michelle said, her tone sympathetic. She quickly printed a duplicate of the receipt and handed it to me. Holding the paper felt like grasping a piece of the puzzle that would unravel a larger deception. Thanks, Michelle. I've got to sort this out. Armed with the printout, my next step was confronting the family, particularly Carol. The drive to my mother-in-law's house was heavy with anticipation. They were likely gathered there, discussing the estate and the funeral's aftermath. My stomach churned with a mix of dread and determination. Upon arrival, the house was unsettlingly quiet. I hesitated at the door, gathering my courage before stepping inside. My footsteps echoed through the hallway, heralding my presence. In the living room, John, Carol, and my mother-in-law sat together, looking like a serene family portrait about to be disrupted. My mother-in-law, her eyes shadowed with sorrow, spoke first. "Dear, we missed you at the funeral yesterday. We thought you'd be there." Taking a deep breath, I responded, "I was told it was today." "I'm truly sorry for your loss," my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I then turned to John. "Can we talk privately? I hope to avoid causing any more distress." John's response sliced through the tense air. "No secrets here. You're not part of this family anymore, remembers?" His words stung sharply, cutting deeper than I expected. Despite the shock and chaos unfolding around me, I persisted, pulling out the printed receipt from the funeral home. "Then explain this to me," I demanded, my voice firm as I presented the evidence. The funeral cost $9,000, not the $90,000 Carol claimed. Where did the rest of the money go? John looked genuinely shocked, his gaze flickering between the receipt and Carol. "What's this about, Carol?" he asked, his tone a mix of confusion and betrayal. Under our scrutinizing eyes, Carol squirmed uncomfortably. After a moment of silence, she admitted in a small voice, "I needed the money." The room fell silent, the weight of her confession hanging heavily in the air. John's mother, overhearing the conversation, chimed in with a disappointed tone. "Your father saved diligently for his farewell. I even gave Carol an extra $20,000 to cover everything fully." I did the quick math aloud, and the tension in the room escalated. $110,000 in total, and only $9,000 spent. "Carol, where's the rest?" Flustered, Carol confessed to splurging the money on a new car for herself, avoiding eye contact as her gaze darted away. I expected John to react with anger or disappointment, but instead, he responded almost tenderly. "You shouldn't have done that. Be more careful next time." His response astounded me. "Careful? She committed fraud, John. And you're okay with that?" John's justification was dismissive and infuriating. "You wouldn't understand. You've got no family. You don't get what it means to stick together." That was the last straw for me. In front of everyone, I signed the divorce papers with a decisive flourish. "Carol, you owe me $45,000. Pay up, or I'm going to the police." John's protests followed me as I walked out the door, but I didn't look back. I had seen and heard enough. The betrayal was complete, and so was my resolve to move forward. As I walked away, the finality of my actions settled in. There was no going back, only forward, away from the lies and deceit that had tainted what I once thought of as family. Packing up my life into boxes felt surreal, as if I were an observer in my own story. The "for sale" sign outside the house stood as a stark reminder of the finality of it all. By afternoon, I was settling into a small apartment that felt more like a fresh start than a downgrade. That evening, while I was sorting through remnants of my past life, my phone rang. John's name flashed on the screen, a name I no longer felt connected to. Driven by curiosity, I answered. "Virginia, you need to back off, Carol." John's voice came through, tinged with uncharacteristic harshness. "Back off." I laughed, cold and sharp. "Not a chance, John. She took it from me, and I want it back. Your sister is a thief." John was silent for a moment. "She's family." "You wouldn't understand family," he finally said. "That ship has sailed, John. As far as I'm concerned, you and your sister are just people I used to know. He tried to argue, but I cut him off. Save it. Carol has 3 weeks to return my money, or I'm pressing charges. And you? Stay out of it. You're nothing to me now. Hanging up, I felt a mix of sadness and liberation. The man I once loved was now just another obstacle on my path to reclaiming my life. 3 weeks later, a knock at my door heralded the return of my $45,000. Carol stood there, her posture defiant, a sneer playing on her lips. "Here's your money," she spat, thrusting an envelope into my hands. "Happy now, you money-grubbing witch." I took the envelope, my gaze steady. "It's not about the money, Carol. It's about principle, about not letting you walk all over people." She laughed hollowly, bitter. "Whatever helps you sleep at night." As she turned to leave, I called out, "Just remember, Carol, karma's a real pain. What goes around comes around." Closing the door, I felt a profound sense of closure, ready to move forward without looking back. Leaning against the wall, I held the envelope, feeling its weight in my hand. The money was a minor victory, but the real triumph was standing up for myself, refusing to be a victim of their greed and deception. Life had settled into a new, calmer, and more predictable rhythm when unexpectedly, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in a long time. It was John, a voice from a past I had meticulously tucked away. "Hey, I need a favor. A big one." John's voice sounded worn, more than I remembered. I hesitated, thrown off by the suddenness of his call. "A favor, John? We're past that, don't you think?" I replied. "It's Carol. She's in deep trouble this time. Debt's up to her eyeballs, and the wolves are at the door. We've sold everything, the house, the shop. It's still not enough," he explained. His words took a moment to sink in. "And you're calling me why?" "I'm not part of the circus anymore, John," I responded. He sighed, a sound dripping with desperation. "Come on, don't be like that. You got out and made it big with your trading. Can you spare something, for old time's sake?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything, he still saw me as a lifeline for their mess. Spare something for her, after she nearly ruined us with her lies? You've got some nerve, John. It's not just for her. It's for all of us. You wouldn't be where you are without me. Don't forget that, he countered, his voice laced with bitterness. A sharp, short laugh escaped me. Where I am is despite you, not because of you. To think I owe you, that's rich. There was silence on the line, heavy and uncomfortable. "So that's it then? You're going to turn your back on us?" he finally said. "There is no us, John. There hasn't been for a long time. And as for turning my back, I think you've got me confused with someone who still cares," I said firmly. Hanging up, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, yes, but also relief. That chapter of my life was truly closed now. Sitting in the living room of my new house, a place I had earned with my hard work and smarts, I realized just how far I had come. This was my sanctuary, built not on the shaky grounds of deceit and manipulation, but on my resilience and hard work. Here, in this space, I had found peace and a testament to my independence and strength.